Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome to the Sunday International Big Book Workshop. I'm Dan B. I'm recovered alcoholic. Sobriety date 1st of Feb 2021. This workshop is facilitated by Kimball H. This study relies on your listening, but please, we pray that you have your big book in hand and follow along with a pen or pencil or highlighter to make any notes you need and pause if you have to. Write down any questions and we will take them at the end of the meeting. We will keep everybody muted during the workshop except for the facilitators. Just muted somebody, beg your pardon. Any inappropriate behavior will not be tolerated and you will be removed by one of the co-hosts. This meeting is being recorded. The audio portion only is being recorded and only of the facilitators. This will be stopped at the end of the meeting to preserve anybody's anonymity. Have a great meeting, everybody, and how we open this meeting is with the step 3 prayer found on page 63. Please join me in God. I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Over to you, Kimball. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Keystone Sunday Daily Big Book, Weekly Big Book International Meeting. My name is Kimball. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Sobriety date February 3rd, 2020. So I'd like to welcome everybody. Hope everybody's having a great day. Welcome anybody new, anybody coming back, or anybody struggling. So, today I'd like to talk about there is a solution on page, it starts on page 17 of our big book. We're going to be hitting some highlights, some good points. And I hope everybody got a pen, a paper, or a big book, so you can take a few notes if you have to. And like Dan said, this meeting is recorded, and it'll be to our YouTube page here shortly today or tomorrow. So one thing about there is a solution. You know, we alcoholics, we have struggled with alcoholism, and it took control of our lives, and we couldn't find a solution on our own. You know, in my personal experience, I tried to solve my own problem, but I always thought I was just a heavy drinker. I ain't never thought I was an alcoholic, but people were calling me an alcoholic. For starting 40 years ago, they were calling me an alcoholic way back then. And I just used to laugh at them and joke at them because I could outdrink them. But, you know, over the course of drinking, alcohol took me away from everything I love, along with some other things as well that went on in my life. It was actually more than alcohol, but this is an AA meeting today. But, you know, and it brought me to a point to eventually, you know, I wanted to stop for years and I couldn't stop. Wanted to, but I simply had no solution. So today we're going to be talking about there is a solution, and it is. And I'd like to talk a little bit about when Ebby came to see Bill Wilson, the co-founder of our program. You know, I was in the fellowship for over 3 decades, and I kept drinking. I was a relapse king. Every time I get a white chip, a few days later I get another white chip because I go out and drink again because I still thought I had all power. But you know, I come to find out I didn't have no power at all. So here when Ebby came to see Bill at the kitchen table that day, right? Bill gave us a after this because he wrote it down. He said that even though the fellowship is one of the powerful elements in the cement that binds us together, that alone is not enough. So the fellowship was never enough for me. People was telling me, come to meetings, meeting makers make it. You can stay sober, just don't pick it up one day at a time, live and let live. I done heard all this slogan. It's hard to say slogan, bumper sticker, sobriety. Every time I heard that stuff, I went out and got drunk again. But see, the great fact is that we need both elements for recovery, right? It was two things that Bill needed in order for him to recover. You know, the fellowship consists of the fellowship that Ebby had with Bill. Ebby had been sober like 6 months. he got sober in the Oxford group, which was a religious group. So he come to see Bill and fellowship with Bill to pass on what he had learned early on. Now that's amazing, because in the meetings I used to make, right, they said, don't you try to sponsor nobody or take them through the program unless you have a year. But it's nowhere written down in the big book. And Ebby is a prime example. Bill is a prime example. So what Ebby brought to Bill, he brought him a practical program of action, and eventually led him to have that vital spiritual experience that the big book talks about. And this is the real solution for alcoholism. It's spiritual. It's a spiritual experience, better known as a psychic change. That's when everything changed in our lives. So here on page 17, there's a solution. We of Alcoholics Anonymous know thousands of men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill. Nearly all have recovered. They have solved the drink problem. Well, we want to know how we solved the drink problem. I couldn't solve my drink problem. See, I drank for 42 years and did all those kind of things, but I couldn't solve it on my own. I was an utter failure. I got to a point where I was beyond human aid. I wanted to die many times. I just didn't want to live. I couldn't live with alcohol. I couldn't live without alcohol. But you know, I come to learn. We went through the doctor's opinion, which we'll go through the doctor's opinion in the future at another time. But I learned in the doctor's opinion that I suffer from an illness I never thought that I had. And this illness is known as an allergy of the body, right? When somebody's a real alcoholic like me, when I take a drink, I simply cannot stop. My body demands more. And this is called a phenomenon of craving. So once that craving hits, I'm gonna want more. And I used to get thirsty as I drank. I don't know about y'all, but the more I poured in my body, the more that I wanted. I couldn't cut off the darn allergies. I couldn't stop, period. And then there's another symptom of Alcoholics Anonymous. As a matter of fact, the allergy is the first symptom. Now we're talking about the malady. The illness of alcoholism, it centers in the mind rather than in the body. So it's a mental illness as well. You know, Bill's gonna talk about a few things. I'm gonna discuss a few things. But then the book tells us, therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic is centered in the mind rather than in the body. And the truth is, you know, that me being allergic to alcohol, it was important for me to understand. And I learned that at the beginning of the book, because, as I mentioned, without information, we can't find a solution. So I had to have this information. You know, I had a big book long time ago, right? But the people that were calling themselves trying to help me, just read the first 164 pages. But he forget the important part, the doctor's opinion, you know, the preface, the forwards. They didn't tell me to read all this. But, you know, thank God for the Keystone Group 3 years ago. They took me through this thing. And that what solved my alcohol problem, because I had that vital spiritual experience and the psychic change. So now I learned what the problem is. I suffer from an allergy and a malady. So, and it's a thought, you know, the malady can be a thought. Sometimes it happens slowly, and sometimes we focus on another drink. And we'll get to that here in just a moment. But anyway, they have solved the drink problem. But then at the bottom of page 17, it relates the tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. This is the great news this book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism. The thing is, we all have a common problem. We have a common solution as well. You know, my biggest problem, all the years I was trying to fix myself, my biggest problem was myself. You know, I didn't want help. I was too proud to ask for help. But at one point, alcohol had made me bow down. So I didn't have a choice but to get some help. So, Dan, I want you to touch on the top of page 18, where it talks about this illness.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
An illness of this sort, and we have come to believe it an illness, involves those about us in a way no other human sickness can. If a person has cancer or are sorry for him, and no one is angry or hurt, but not so with the alcoholic's illness. For with it there goes an annihilation of all things worthwhile in life. It engulfs all whose lives touch the sufferers. It brings misunderstanding, fierce resentment, financial insecurity, disgusted friends and employers, warped lives of blameless children, sad wives and parents. Anyone can increase the list.
Okay, thank you, bro. No doubt about it. An illness of this sort, well, they call it a disease today, but this alcoholic illness is prevalent around the world. And you know, the alcoholic illness had been around probably since the beginning of time, I'm pretty sure. But Bill Wilson was the first one that actually wrote down the details of alcoholism in a book, because his story presents us with what we were like and what happened and what we are like now. So when Eddie came to tell Bill how the two guys had appeared in front of a judge and how they took him to the Oxford group meetings. Now remember, the Oxford group is a religious group, so AA was actually born in this religious group, but AA is not a religious program. It's simply spiritual. So there, Eddie had learned the solution to our problem is being grounded in a power that's greater than human power, and to talk about the vital spiritual experience as well. So for the first time, when Eddie came to see Bill, Bill finally understood the problem, as Dr. Sipworth had discussed with him in the hospital. You know, Bill made several trips to Towns Hospital where Dr. Sipworth worked at. So now Bill could start to see the solution to the problem. So Eddie brought to Bill what would be, you know, step one and step two, right? But the steps wasn't written at the time. Then he laid out for him a practical program of action. He said, Bill, if you follow this program of action, you will find that power greater than you, and you won't have to drink. And Eddie said, that's what I've been doing. And I've been doing this for 2 months. So Eddie laid out the practical program of action. You know, and AA is always talking about action and more action. And faith without works is dead. And so when Eddie came to Broadway, bringing this message, it later turned out to be steps 3 through 12. So now we see that Bill has access to the first 3 steps. So we saw him take step 1, where he admitted he was in complete defeat and he was utterly powerless. He seen there was powerlessness in him. He couldn't stop himself from drinking. So there was no step 1 when he admitted he was fully powerless. So because the steps hadn't been incorporated in those days. But then the important thing, and it was this was important to me, Bill finally knew what the problem was, what the solution was, and what the practical program of action was. That's what it took for me in order for me to recover from alcoholism. So it talks about this illness. Matter of fact, on page 142 of our big book, it's in the chapter to employees or to employers. You know, and I'm gonna read something from the first paragraph. So it says, at this point, it might be well to explain alcoholism, the illness. And we discovered what the illness was. We suffer from 2 symptoms, the physical allergy and the malady of the mind, which is mental. So say that you believe he is gravely ill, that he is a gravely ill person with this qualification, being perhaps fatally ill. You want to ask him, does he want to get well? You ask because many alcoholics being warped and drugged, the alcoholic mind is totally warped. I know mine was, because I couldn't stop drinking. Then you ask him, does he want to quit? But does he want to quit? And will he take every necessary step, submit to anything to get well, to stop drinking forever? These are several questions right here. And if he wants to stop drinking forever, we seek vital permanent recovery. Because an alcoholic like me, if I go back to drinking today, I'm gonna be back where I was before I got sober. and I know I'll be dead somewhere within a few weeks probably. And it's a story in the big book that talks about the man that stayed off of liquor till he retired. But then when he did retire, he put on his sofa slippers, pulled out the bottle, and within 4 years, he was dead. Well, alcoholism is a fatal illness. I was at that point. I was at the point of death. So on page 18, Dan, where it talks about we hope this volume down to what italics stop at.
Yeah, no problem. We hope this volume will inform and comfort those who are or who may be affected. There are many. Highly competent psychiatrists who have dealt with us have found it sometimes impossible to persuade an alcoholic to discuss his situation without reserve. Strangely enough, wives, parents, and intimate friends usually find us even more unapproachable than do the psychiatrist and the doctor. But the ex-problem drinker who has found this solution, who is properly armed with the facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. Until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Thank you, bro. Now it talks about we hope this volume will inform and comfort those who are or who may be affected. And we learned about this back on the preface, which is on page XI. And it says, because this book has become the basic text for our society and has helped such large numbers of alcoholic men and women to recovery, there is this strong sentiment against any radical changes being made in it. Therefore, the first portion of this volume describing the AA recovery program has been left largely untouched in the course of revisions made for the second, third, and fourth edition. So from the beginning, this is the only place where we're going to find the AA program of recovery. It's in the first portion of this book. You know, that makes me think, right? I thought I was in recovery when I was in the fellowship, right? That's why I kept drinking, because I didn't have the program. I just had fellowship. Yeah, go to meetings, meeting makers make it. Get out the meeting, drink again. Act crazy again. Go to jail again. Go to the hospital again. So, but this explains very well where it is. When I learned this, man, I could make some progress now. Shoot. So that makes me think about the forward to the first edition on page XIII. So it goes on to say, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. There's two symptoms again. So here we got the problem, we got the solution, and we got the course of action to show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary. So that tells us that this book is going to contain everything we need to get sober and to stay sober, and how true it is. And then they go on to mention, and besides, we are sure this way of living has disadvantages for all. And it talks about this design for living here on page 28, and page 81 as well. So, beautiful thing. Now, more about the solution. But the ex-problem drinker who has found this solution, who is properly armed with facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. Until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. What is this? I just seen something crazy in the chat, but that's all right. You ain't gonna stop me from doing what I do. Nobody. This is a gift for me, a gift of sobriety. I'm just trying to pass it along to somebody else unless y'all want to die, because if you keep drinking or doing other things, this stuff is deadly. So stuff like to kill me, man. I don't ever want to live like that again. But then the man who approached me, and I was looking for a sponsor over 3 years ago to help. So I needed somebody to take me through this program. So a man approached me and said, "Do you want to take 12 steps?" So he took his time and his patience and took me through it. And here in AA, I found a solution to my problem. You know, a problem that I couldn't solve on my own. But thank God for this program and what it's done for me. I can't thank God enough. No, and I don't force my God on nobody. Uh, it's not my job to force my job on nobody. My God on nobody. My bad. So anyway, and there's the solution, right? Bill wrote this book after AA had been around for a while, and he was able to draw from the experiences of his fellows as well as from his own life. This depth of experience is very clear from what they're going to present in this chapter right here. But the main thing, an important fact, it is our sincerest hope to those that are still suffering from alcoholism and even those in recovery. You know, we may struggle from time to time, but it's our hope that we come to believe with utmost faith that there is truly a solution to their problems. If we cannot believe the possibility of recovery, we are doomed to never experience it. You know, the big book tells us that most chronic alcoholics are doomed. So true. With the real alcoholic, we are doomed. So I'll touch a point here on page 21, page 20, the bottom of page 20, until what it talks about the real alcoholic on page 21. Okay. Where it talks about moderate drinkers, Dan.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah.
Page 20, everybody. Bottom page, moderate drinkers have little trouble in giving up liquor entirely if they have good reason for it. They can take it or leave it alone. Then we have a certain type of hard drinker. He may have the habit bad enough to gradually impair him physically and mentally. It may cause him to die a few years before his time. If a sufficiently strong reason, ill health, falling in love, change of environment, or warning of a doctor becomes operative, this man can also stop or moderate, although he may find it difficult and troublesome, and may even need medical attention.
Okay, but what about the real alcoholic? We can stop right there, Brother Dan. Now, Bill here describes several types of alcoholic. Now, we have moderate drinkers. A moderate drinker can take one drink, maybe to drink half the second one, and he can just stop and walk away and go home, or just go to sleep or do what he want to do. He's not bounded by the annals of alcoholism. Then we have a certain type of hard drinker, right? He may have the habit bad enough to gradually impair him physically and mentally. It may cause him to die a few years before his time. You know, it may cause him to die. This stuff will kill you. I lost friends to this stuff. I lost family to this stuff in all my years. But somebody was with me, a power that was definitely greater than me, that got me through all the crap that I put myself in. So this drinker here, a heavy drinker, they can drink, and then they can just leave it alone. If they get a warning from a doctor, or they might find a new love or something, they can stop or they can moderate. But the real alcoholic, what about him? That's what I am. I'm a real alcoholic. And it says he may start off as a moderate drinker. He may or may not become a continuous hard drinker, but at some stage of his drinking career, he begins to lose all control of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. This is the allergy that kicks in. This is the physical allergy. And like I said earlier, it's simply when you take a drink, the phenomenon of craving kicks in and you can't shut it off. Our bodies demand more. So here at this point, we have lost the power of choice of drink because we done lost total control. When we can't stop ourselves from drinking, it's where the unmanageability comes in. If we can't stop it, then it's unmanageable. It's totally out of control. But then it goes on to relate. Here's the fellow who has been puzzling you, especially in his lack of control. I experienced this very early in my drinking career, right? Remember, I drank for 42 years. So I went through 42 years of this kind of behavior right here because I was my experience showed I was a real alcoholic a long, long time ago, and I didn't even know it. So lack of control, I couldn't stop, and I had no defense against the first drink, no matter what the occasion was, no matter what I had to do. I couldn't wish alcoholism away. I couldn't wish that first drink away. So here's the fellow who has been puzzling you, especially in his lack of control. He does absurd, incredible, tragic things while drinking. He is the real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He is seldom mildly intoxicated. He is always more or less insanely drunk. That was me as well. I can relate to that. Every time I went out the house, I was insanely drunk, and I couldn't do nothing about it. Uh, Baffled. The baffling feature of alcoholism is the utter inability to leave it alone. Wow. So, a little bit about the AA kinship, the common suffering that we go through. We got a lot of newcomers that come in, and we even have people been in the fellowship for years. Like I was in the fellowship, and we represent almost every belief and attitude that's imaginable. We have atheists, we have agnostics, we have true believers, we have people of nearly every race, color, culture, and religion, right? See, my religion didn't solve my alcohol problem. I tried to fix my alcohol problem through my religion. But you know what? Uh, I had lack of power. That was my dilemma. But my religion couldn't solve my alcohol problem because I was still running on self-will. But this program, it led me to have a relationship with God, and that made all the difference in the world. And that's what produced this psychic change and spiritual experience. So, in AA, we're supposed to be bound together. We got a fellowship, a kinship. We all suffer from the same thing. But, consequently, the full individual liberty is to practice any creed or principle or whatever should be a first consideration for all of us. So we don't pressure anybody about what belief in our power is. It's simply your choice. I mean, I know what my choice is, and I don't force my views on nobody else. I just simply, it's open for everyone who believes. My own conception of God is the God of the heaven is up above. It's Jesus Christ. That's the power that's greater than me. He the only one can solve my alcohol problem. No humans could solve it. No treatment centers could solve it. No woman can solve it. No human could solve it. Doctor, psychiatrists, I've been through all of this. So we must love and respect each other for whatever y'all choose to believe in or whatever we all choose to believe in. But, in the beginning, the earlier members, and so look at Evie, look at Bill, they realized from the beginning, especially Bill. Now, Bill really knew this. The sole purpose for Bill when it comes to staying sober was looking out for another alcoholic to help. Bill was 6 months sober and he was on the fence. He succeeded in keeping himself sober, but he couldn't help nobody else get sober, though he tried until he met Dr. Bob, and that changed everything. That's the reason we got AA today, because of that. If Bill would have went back in there and took that drink, we probably wouldn't even have AA today. So, Bill and Bob, they went to great lengths, to reach out and help other alcoholics. So, AA it's a fellowship, right? A community of like-minded sufferers who have found a way out of a hopeless condition. For me, if I hadn't had AA, I probably wouldn't be around today, because it's simple. This stuff was killing me. So, we don't have, we come to AA because we can't stop ourselves from drinking. And desperation is definitely involved. Bill was at the point of desperation. So, we face a lot of consequences being an alcoholic. But alcoholism, the consequences didn't make us alcoholic. Our behavior didn't make us alcoholic. Simply the two symptoms of alcoholism. That's what made us alcoholic. So eventually it comes to the point where I knew I was an alcoholic. So I got to praying to God. See, I went to ENA for years. I went to AA for years, just being in the fellowship. But the solution was presented to me. But this big book tells us here there is a solution. And the great part about it, the solution is spiritual. You don't have to be religious. It's a spiritual solution. So the bottom line, I had to get out of myself, stop playing God. Then I could move on with it. So here, I'm going to share something here. Now, like Bill, as we go through this big book, right, Bill builds a spiritual structure, and this was necessary. And Bill was a prolific writer, right? He deal with us by paint pictures of the mind, and with his use of words, he had a beautiful use of word. So he's gonna be talking all the way through the book about a wonderful, effective spiritual structure that can be built. And later on, he's gonna tell us what this structure is all about, because he said we are going to pass through it to freedom. That last reference is his first reference to this. So he said, upon a foundation of complete wilderness, I might build what I saw in my friend. Now, this is when he's talking about Ebby, when Ebby came over there and showed him the change. So the foundation of our recovery is based on wilderness. There are three things that are essential for recovery. That's open-mindedness, honesty, wilderness. You can put them in any order you want to. And that wilderness really comes through step one. That's the first step of being wilderness. So when we can admit that we are powerless over alcohol. So my step one experience lasted almost 40 years, because I got ordered AA back in 1983, right? But I couldn't fully admit that I had a problem. No, I can control my alcohol, but the lie detector determined that was a lie. You can't control and enjoy. You can't control your drinking. You can't stop when you start. That is a problem. So I did what we call a step one promise, right? Means I'm going to relapse. If I'm powerless over this stuff, that means I'm going to drink it again. So we had to make a 100% admission. And then step two, we talk about we become to believe in a power greater than ourselves. So, alcohol was my power, and then alcohol became my master. And as long as I was living that way of life, I kept drinking. I was going to drink regardless until I came to believe in something that was greater than me, and to take the suggestions wrote out in this program. That's the only way I could get relief from alcoholism. Then again, in step two, page number, I can't think. We are going to see where believing in the power greater than ourselves, it becomes the cornerstone of that spiritual structure. I'll probably get on the spiritual structure next week when we go through that whole thing. So when Ebby came to see Bill, right, like I said, he had now taken steps 1 and 2. But here's a point on page 22, Dan, where it says, at the bottom of page 22, where it talks about, we know that while the alcoholic keeps away from drink, and we'll go from there to the next.
Yeah, cool. Last paragraph, page 22. We know that while the alcoholic keeps away from drink, as he may do for months or years, he reacts much like other men. We are equally positive that once he takes any alcohol whatever into his system, something happens, both in the bodily and mentally sense, which makes it virtually impossible for him to stop. The experience of an alcoholic will abundantly confirm this.
Okay, thank you, bro. That's great right there. Now, while the alcoholic keeps away from drinking, what he may do for months or years, he reacts much like other men. But here's the problem. Once he take that first drink, he can be sober 25, 30 years. He can be sober a week or whatever. But when we cross that line and we become real alcoholics, when you take that first drink, something happens. We have an abnormal reaction to alcohol. We are different from everybody else. I see people drink all the time, and they can take 1 or 2, and they can go to sleep. Even during my drinking career, I could not go to sleep. I had to get more, and I could never shut it off. But then when they take alcohol in their system, back to the paragraph, something happens both in the bodily and the mental sense, and it makes it virtually impossible for us to stop. And this is some of my experience, as it says on page 20, top of page 23. The experience of any alcoholic will abundantly confirm this. Yeah, something would happen to my brain. I take that drink, then something happened to my body, and then come consequences galore. No, it's pretty hard when you can't stop yourself from drinking. That's why I definitely love AA. I had to have it. Everything else in my life failed. Shoot, I failed myself. I thought I was a man. I could stop myself. Shoot, I couldn't stop. You could have put me in front of a firing squad, right? Put me a bottle of whiskey by me and said, "Well, Kim, if you can stay sober, uh, we'll give you $1 million." So they would have to shoot me because I couldn't have resisted that drink. I'd have put it in my system and they could have filled me up full of bullets. Page 25. It says there is a solution. Almost none of us, like the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings, which the process requires for its successful consummation. But we saw what really worked in others, and we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living, the hopelessness and the futility of life. See, an alcoholic like me, I was simply beyond human aid. I was helpless, I was hopeless. I used to look at myself in the mirror and ask myself, am I crazy? So yes, I was insane. I had the alcoholic insanity. So and I wasn't nothing I could do about it. And then once again, this book gives us hope. It says, when therefore we were approached by those with whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us to do but to pick up the kit, to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. Once again, it took a lot of humility. It takes all of us to be humble. We have to be humble, and we can't humble ourselves. Myself, I had to ask God, please, God, can you humble me down? Can you help me with this alcoholism? God, please help. I begged him for help. Then he sent somebody into my life and took me through this. And this is where I found a solution to my alcohol problem. I couldn't do it no other way. And spiritual is very important. This is a spiritual program. And me myself, I'm a religious person as well. And all, what AA has done for me, it has brought me into a closer and a working relationship, with my God and my Lord and my Savior. Uh, it's a beautiful process. We just have to pick it up and go through it. And then it says, when therefore, okay, we have found much of heaven and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. Now, this is the experience right here. If we can live in a new dimension today, when we get through this program, and the book says us, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. And this is the path that they talk about on page 58. It's the simple kit of spiritual tools that's laid at our feet. It's laid out right here in the book, step by step, page by page, line by line. But see, here's where a little drama goes on. Then on page 23, once in a while, you read that for me.
23. Whereabouts? Sorry, Bill.
Once in a while.
Oh yeah, sorry, let me bookmark over it. Once in a while, he may tell the truth. And the truth, strange to say, is usually that he has no more idea why he took that first drink than you have. Some drinkers have excuses with which they are satisfied part of the time, but in their hearts, they really do not know why they do it. Once this malady has a real hold, they are baffled a lot. There is the obsession that somehow, someday, they will beat the game, but they often suspect they're down for the count
Yeah, no doubt. Thank you, brother.
on Malady
They
Day.
often they often suspect they are down for the count, no doubt about it. When it talks about this part of it, they often suspect they are down because they're still trying to start drinking on their own, like I did for 40 years. I always thought, hey, I'm gonna stop tomorrow. When I drink tomorrow, I'm gonna take two. No, that's a lie. That was the lie detector determined. No, Kim, you can't take no two drinks. You're a darn alcoholic because the phenomenon of craving kick in. Boom, then I got to drink everything that I can get my hands on. Shoot. But then what got me right said once in a while he may tell the truth. You know, we alcoholics, but we can tell some tales to get them drinks in us. We tell this tale, we can tell that lie, we can tell that one to get us what we wanted. And we didn't care who we hurt, who we lied to, as long as we can get something out of them to get us to keep our drink going on, we did. But then here's where this matter that kicks in, right? It says, about the excuses. Some drinkers have excuses with which they are satisfied part of the time. And then they have no idea why we take their first drink than you have. So no idea. See, this stuff centers in the mind. Well, you already know, in my experience, if I already knew how I was going to act after I drank, I wouldn't have took that drink. But then again, I'm baffled by the baffling feature of alcoholism. I had the utter inability to leave it alone. So I had no idea why I took that drink. I just knew I took it. And then I knew after I took it, somebody was going to pay. Simple as that. Somebody was going to pay. So, but then I was satisfied with my excuses in my life. Yeah. Why did you drink, Kim? What made you drink? Well, you pissed me off. You made me angry. See, that's some excuses, right? Uh, can't nobody make us angry unless it comes from within us. So, but that was an excuse I made. Somebody used to say, well, exes or spouse used to say something to me. I play like I'm mad so I can get out that door and get some more whiskey in my butt. But then here's a kick, and Bill talks about this in some of his documentaries that I studied. He talks about this. There is this obsession, right? So he talks about the obsession. Now, the obsession don't make us alcoholics. It's just our darn mind concentrating on this stuff. But you know, we ain't got to follow our mind. But when you helpless as I was, that mind gonna say, yeah, Kim, you need that drink. You need that drink to live. You need that drink to go out to the store. You need that drink to go to work. So he says there is the obsession that somehow, someday, they will beat the game. So this is the obsession. It's a problem in the mind, somewhere in our mind. So, you know, and I dealt with, I mean, gosh. And I pray, I tell you, I pray today. 42 years of living a real alcoholic life. So I pray that nobody ever has to suffer for as long as I did. Oh my God. That was the worst. But you know, thank God. He relieved me of my alcoholism. The last 3 years I've been sober, I have a beautiful life today. I don't care what happened, despite whatever circumstances I face, I can deal with life today with a sober and a sane mind. Wow. But then on top of page 24, I want to hit on this point. Where it's in italics. Yeah.
Cool.
That's
Top page 24, the italics. The fact is that
yeah.
most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink.
Okay, thank you, brother. Yes, no doubt about it. The fact is that most alcoholics have lost the power of choice in drink. Our choice are gone. The choice is gone. Some people say, well, I can choose to drink or not, but if you're a real alcoholic, you ain't got no choice. You gonna drink. That's my experience. I didn't have no choice. I couldn't live without it. I didn't want to live without it. Then I couldn't live with it. So what was I to do? Take another drink. That was going to change my whole attitude and outlook upon life. And then he talks about this so-called willpower becomes non-existent. No matter how much willpower I had, the willpower was not enough for me. I tried to use my own willpower and always led me to a drink. Then the bottom line where the italics in it says we are without defense against the first drink. But here's a solution to it. Page 43. It says once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink, except in a few rare cases. Neither he or any other human being can provide such a defense. His defense must come from a higher power. That is the solution, people. We have to have a power greater than us. If you're an alcoholic, as I was, as we all probably are. So, but then you know what keeps us from the solution is this selfishness that we deal with. This utter lack of being honest. You know, I was selfish, I was self-centered, I was conceited. It was always about self. I couldn't be honest if you paid me, put some money in my bank account. I was gonna lie about everything. I was gonna lie when I didn't have to lie. Wow. But you know, and that's what happens when we pursuing another drink. We're gonna tell lies, man. So, but you know another thing about in this chapter, we're gonna touch on that too. Oh man, I'm ready to finish that. But anyway, you know, we'll spend massive time and amounts of money trying to hide our alcohol or whatever around the house, trying to make sure that nobody can take it away. I used to hide mine in my pillow and sleep on top of it so nobody wouldn't come in there and take it from me. So, but you know, we go through extremes. Oh wow, we go through extremes, so we want to keep our drinking going. And you know, and there's a solution. Apart from divine help, we alcoholics, we are doomed. We chronically doomed. So on page 45, it talks about. I want to read this part. It says, "Our human resources, as marshaled by the will, were not sufficient. They failed utterly." So it failed every time. I was trying to create a change within me that couldn't be changed. I couldn't change myself. A sick mind cannot fix a sick mind. Wow, thank God for this program. Now, touch on back on more. There is a solution. As Bill said, you know, the solution is simple. It's spiritual. And you know, some people may have a hard time trying to accept spirituality, but you know, that's the best thing ever happened in my life, accepting a spiritual program. Like fellowship couldn't do it for me. I had to have the program as it's described in this book. So, but it must be, we have to get a connection with some kind of power that's greater than ourselves. For me, this connection was acquired by taking the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous as directed by the directions in this big book. So I want to share this part. It says, if you are seriously alcoholic, as we are, we believe there is no middle of the road solution. It's either all in or it's all out. We can't hang on the fence. I tried straddling the fence. I always fell on the side where the alcohol was at. I couldn't fall on the spiritual side. No, alcohol was my master. It dominated my every thought, my every action. So we were in a position where life was becoming impossible. And if we had passed into a region from which there is no return through human aid, we had but two alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could, and the other to accept spiritual help. This we did because we honestly wanted to and were willing to make the effort. Now, when it says this we did because we honestly wanted to, this is a collective experience here. The first 100 men and women wrote this book. So it's all collective. They experienced this. So we need to experience what they left us here in this big book. We got to have the same experience, or you know, or else we be doomed. No doubt about it. We would be doomed. But you know, it's all about gaining a connection, relationship, and it talks about that back in the spiritual experience in the back of the book. It talks about this relationship here on page 5, 6, and 7. I want to touch on that just a minute. And it's in the bottom paragraph. And it reads, what often takes place in a few months could seldom have been accomplished by years of self-discipline. With few exceptions, our members find that they have tapped an unsuspected inner resource of power, which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves. This is part of the solution, people, this spiritual experience, this psychic change, this change in beliefs, change in attitudes and actions. The way we live life today is totally opposite than the way it was during my drinking career. So most of us think this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is the essence of spiritual experience. Our more religious members call it God consciousness. Thank God for what He has done for us today. Wow, without this solution, Lord knows where I'd be at today. Uh, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. Probably wouldn't even be on top of the world. I'd probably be under the ground somewhere. So, wow, thanks for this experience. The only way I could get this experience was through these 12 steps with my sponsor and other, I had other people on this road helping me as well. So, here it is, page 568. So we find that no one need have difficulty with the spirituality of the program. Once again, willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials of recovery, but these are indispensable. Honesty, no doubt about it. It took humility first, like I shared earlier, but I had to get honest with myself. I had to get honest that Kim, you have a problem. You can't stop. You got to have some help. So I wonder who can help me. So I begged my God over 3 years ago, God, do I need NA? Do I need AA? Which of these programs do I need? He directed me to AA, and right before the pandemic hit, I got sober, and then I found this Keystone group, and this life changed. And today we just need to experience growth because we can't graduate from this thing. We can't master it. So we have to just take it easy, relax and take it easy and go through with it. So before we close, I want to share on page 80, let's see, page 89, 88. Okay, on page 85, I want to share this. Okay, at the bottom of page 85, where it mentions step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. We shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer. Better men than we are using it constantly. It works if we had a proper attitude and work at it. It talks about attitude, it talks about work, no doubt. We have to work this thing. It just ain't gonna fall in our lap. There are steps we have to take. There are things we have to do every day. What I love about step 11, right? It gives me a daily reprieve, but it's contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. So, and it's got a clock the night before I go to bed. It's got some directions that we can follow here in this book. It says when we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Then it's got some questions we can ask ourselves. Were we resentful? Do we owe an apology? What the main question is, what could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time? Or were we thinking of what we could do for others? What we could pack into the stream of life? How we can help others instead of just continually helping myself to another drink? Today, helping others is very important to me. And then, in the morning, it talks about on awakening. Let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day, but before we begin, we do ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. So under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance. After all, God gave us brains to use. And one more thing, what solidifies this 24-hour day clock, right? It says, as we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful, and we ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. Thy will be done, not my own. So thank you everyone for being here today. We're getting ready to bring this meeting to a close. I appreciate the attendance, and I hope I was able to help somebody somewhere on something that may help you in the journey. I thank God for this. So Okay, Brother Dan, you can close them out. We can stay open about probably about, if anybody got any questions or comments after the prayer, we can get there then.